Good morning. Happy Wednesday. And I have a different background because I am now in Asheville, checking it out, doing our test drive in our handy dandy little Airbnb. But I want you to wrap your mind around this. Out of the 1.2 million resume writers with their byline, resume writers on LinkedIn, this woman, who is our guest today, Robynn Storey, has over 500,000 followers. And that's not a big surprise because she is irreverent. She calls out bullshit. Her content is amazing. And she has grown her business. She employs unbelievable. I think we said about 60 different people in her organization. Her point of difference is not the same old, same old, same old. Her name is Robynn Storey. And I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but I'll tell you, that is her approach to resume writing. Storytelling that matters so that you get hired. So here she is. Good morning, good morning, good morning from New Jersey.
Good morning.
Robynn Storey. Thank you so much, Queen.
Please.
For coming
Thank
on
you
the
for
show
having me. I appreciate
today.
it.
Oh my goodness. And I couldn't wait to use a swear word in one of my titles. And I couldn't have aligned it with a better person than you. Because one of the
I
things
think the
I
word
admire,
bullshit appears in 90% of the posts that I create on
yes,
LinkedIn
exactly,
because
exactly.
that's where we are.
That's the through line. So aside from that, the reason why I had you on and the reason why I really wanted to share you with the audience is because it seems like the crap pile keeps getting bigger and bigger. And your approach to calling it out is something that companies for sure need to pay attention to. Secondly, candidates in the marketplace also need to understand like where their power is. I know one of your posts talked about, a guy that made it very clear what his salary requirements were, and then they came back with an offer below his asking and told him he needed to negotiate for that, which was like complete bullshit. So see you later, right? And so you need to know when enough is enough as well. So what I wanted to also have you do, please, is talk a little bit about why storytelling is so meaningful in resumes and all the bad habits that most people still are thinking about in terms of how they should construct their resume and even how they should speak about their experience.
Absolutely. So most people, come to us with an existing resume, right? They send it over, we take a look, and 99% of the time, it's going along the sort of old standards in terms of what your resume should look like. Some sort of an objective statement, some sort of chronological view of your history. That's all well and good. But ultimately, the content on your resume, which is what we consider a two-page resume to be incredibly valuable real estate experience, right? What are the things that you should be including and saying and telling and expanding on and showcasing that this two-page document is going to make someone pick up the phone and call you? When you think of your resume that way, you're going to be eliminating quite a bit and you're going to be adding quite a bit more, right? So I always use this example. If you're an operations manager, right, you're going to start off by talking about your team and what you do day to day and yada yada yada. Taking everything a step further, when we're interviewing a resume client, we ask them the questions. What were the obstacles? What were the challenges? What were the opportunities? What did you inherit when you got into this job? So if you say I manage a team of 10, that's one connotation. But if you say I inherited a team of 10, 6 of them were underperforming. I was able to get 5 of them turned around into, record producers or rock star employees and found a spot for another one. that tells me something completely different about you. And that's what it is that we do. We take you, but we take it a step further and a step further and a step further. Because when someone is reviewing your resume, if it's going through an applicant tracking system, you're sending it to someone, they should be getting a sense of what makes you different, what makes you valuable, how it is that you contribute, anything that you can measure, right? Whether it's revenue or production or improvements in employer retention or satisfaction. Those are all the kinds of things that you should be seeing on your resume. That makes you genuine and it makes you accomplished. And everybody has an accomplishment, or 10 or 20.
Absolutely. I love how you talked about contextualizing it. I find that so many people kind of drop off at just the face value. I had a team of 10. What does that mean?
Okay. Right. It doesn't really mean anything to anybody other than you manage 10 people. It doesn't tell me what kind of manager you are. Doesn't tell me what kind of employees you manage. It doesn't tell me how it is that you made them better, made them worse, whatever the case may be. I tell this funny story about a resume client of ours who took over a vice president of business development position. This was years ago. And when he got there, his boss, first day in, calls him into his office and says, I want you to get rid of this entire team. And he said, first of all, he was like astounded because that was never brought up in the interview process. And secondly, he said, why? And he said, well, they've been struggling for years. Well, once our guys sort of jumped into it and figured it out, they had like 4 or 5 different managers over the course of 3 or 4 years. There was a lot of people coming and going, no real set expectations. There were people that were, out in the field that had not been to the office in a year. No one had contacted them, ridden with them, or, asked them what they were doing or set a goal. And by the time he was all done with it, well, he went back to his boss and he said, can you give me 3 months? And the guy said, sure. So he gave him 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, he ended up only getting rid of 2 people on that team and was able to save the jobs of everyone else. That to me is leadership. That's the kind of story you want to see on your resume.
And that just gave me like all the good feels, right? Like it moved me. It didn't make me snore. So
right.
That's
resumes, I always say, are innately boring, right? The more you can do to make it interesting and like you said, moving. And sometimes we make an emotional connection. Sometimes we make a storytelling connection or an accomplishment, or someone can relate to an experience that you had. Those are all things that we consider important. This very sort of genuine bend to every resume. That's critical.
I love this comment from one of my all-time favorites, Erica Reckcamp. Context is invaluable, but be careful not to go negative within the resume. Totally. For sure.
Absolutely.
And oh my gosh, I love this woman. Thank you so much. Appreciate the truth being shared. Like nobody wants to be placated, right? Like we got a job to do, and you have a job to do, candidate, out there in the marketplace. So we're here to cut through any of the stuff that is getting in the way from that document being actionable, right? It's not there. It's not there to sit in a pile. It's there to convert some kind of action, right? Like you said, pick up the phone, email this person. If your resume is not transacting in terms of that activity, then that's a big tell, right?
It is. Absolutely.
Fantastic. We have some other admirers, another snorer here. Oops. And this one from Ankar, great insights. You can now know when your resume is opened. So he sounds like he's got some software. So one of the areas that I want to take a peek into is the applicant tracking system, the necessary evil, the big black hole that some people refer to it as. The ATS gets a lot of shade, right? Both from the candidate end and even from the client, from the hiring decision makers, because it's a process, right? And they can't just go and make it happen because they've got this thing that has to filter all this stuff. And I want to understand from you, because you sound like you have an amazing idea that is literally like a better solution, but also would love to understand, what companies should be effing doing so that they don't miss out on all these exceptional candidates that don't get selected because they're missing like a ridiculous keyword, like you mentioned earlier. Not communicator isn't on your resume. Oops, you're gone.
Right. Well, I think that the purpose of the ATS obviously is twofold, right? So the first and the one that gets all the shade is the one that identifies keywords in a candidate's resume and then matches them up against the position that they're applying for. That's one thing. The second thing is ATS is more like a database, right? So if you're a recruiter and you're hiring for 20 different positions, you might get 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 resumes, right? It helps you to be organized in terms of, who it is that is applied and other, points of data that might be of interest to you and your company, right? But the purpose of this conversation is to focus on the ATS piece that parses your resume, identifies the keyword values, and then scores your viability as a candidate based on those keywords. So technology in and of itself is phenomenal, right? We use technology in our day-to-day lives to make life easier. But the technology behind the ATS is that it's still sort of programmed by humans. So if you've got someone in an HR function, a recruiting function, a management function that's creating a job description, and it's got, 27 different requirements, the idea that an ATS system with all of those keywords that are going to actually appear in someone's resume are slim to none, right? So now you've just eliminated a great number of applicants that may be perfectly qualified for those jobs. I have always been a firm believer in the vetting of a candidate through the use of questions. So whether or not it's 5 questions, 6 questions, 10 questions. So if you are hiring, say, for instance, a chief operating officer for your company, and you have $100 million company, and you want your chief operating officer to have management experience in a company of 50, 60, 70 million. The first question is, have you been a chief operating officer in the past? The answer is going to be yes or no. If so, you're going to move on to the next question. Have you managed a budget or an operations budget of more than $50 million? The answer is going to be yes or no. Yes. Move on to the next question. So you can continue doing this and then asking things about specifics. Do you have experience with mergers and acquisitions? Do you have experience in turning around an underperforming team? Do you have experience in creating, new technology, or not creating, but integrating new technology tools and applications? Maybe that's something that's things that are actually relevant to the job, right? And then once you've got this list of 10 vetting questions, now you've got a really, really great foundation of the candidate that you are trying to find. And then the only resumes you're going to get submitted are from people that have that like experience. So many recruiters and so many hiring managers do oftentimes talk about getting hundreds or thousands of applicants for a position. And I know even at our company, we put out an ad for, we were adding an executive resume writer to our team, and someone who was a mechanic for an airline applied to that job. And so we very just gently said, hey, unless we're missing something on your resume here, you're probably, not going to get a call from us, but, why would you apply for this? I'm always curious to see why people would apply for things, right? So, and it's the same thing. So now multiply that by hundreds or thousands of people. Now you've got sort of a mishmash. You're on overload. Now you're looking and you don't really have, this could all really be resolved instead of the, fill out this application, which you're regurgitating your resume, and start with the vetting questions. And then once they get to the end of the vetting questions, if they answered 8 out of 10 of those or whatever precedent you set or requirement you set, then they would go on to the application. That's going to eliminate a lot of folks that you're never going to consider for the position, and it's going to shine the light on the people that are qualified. That's my 2 cents on the applicant tracking.
That's your 2 cents, and you elect Robynn Storey for hiring president, because seriously, I hope everyone in corporate is listening to like putting in some of these knockout questions. And here is a comment from Kelly. I'd love having Kelly here. I used vetting questions in jobs ads and do not set them up to be knockouts, so I will still review the resume and qualifications regardless of the answer. So
I
somebody
love that.
with a really high level of integrity and not just going with data, actually looking
Right.
at people. Interesting. And then Jeff Altman, thanks for coming. COOs usually aren't being submitted through an ATS. Yes, there are vetting questions that will be used by the search firm to evaluate and assess. And I also appreciate this one from Kenneth Lang. The ATS is only as good as the person programming its settings. So
100%.
you can turn up all the volume and then knock out a lot of great candidates if they didn't go to Harvard or wherever it is, and you're like,
exactly,
super elitist, which is crap. But anyway, that being said, that is your and are people doing what you want them to do? I mean, is this like your ideal, your utopia, or are people actually doing this as a workaround to going through the archaic process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that some people are doing and some people aren't doing it. And, one of the comments was right. I mean, most COOs or most C-suite executives, they're probably working with a headhunter or someone has reached out to them. But if you go on LinkedIn Jobs, for instance, there's plenty of COO positions. People are still applying online. So
Sure.
the things that used to be sort of reserved for, entry, mid, even senior level are now even applying to higher level positions. But he's right. I mean, we tell our COOs and our C-suite folks that we work with, and we work with quite a lot, don't fall into the I'm going to sit in front of my computer and apply for jobs all day, right? You want to do a combination of things, making a target list of companies that you might be interested in working for, networking your ass off. I mean, that is my famous saying, right? Network where you can. And networking isn't saying, hey, if you see something, can you let me know? Networking is saying, hey, I saw this. I see you're connected to so-and-so. Can you make me an introduction? People are much more willing to do something with a definitive ask than they are just to sort of try to help you with your job search.
Somebody said this earlier in the comments, connect the dots for them, right?
Right.
Don't leave them hanging.
Absolutely.
So the next area that I really want to talk about is kind of, this is a little bit of a gear that I grind, like this makes me crazy. Here it is, air quotes, you're overqualified, right? You're overqualified. So
overqualified. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, I mean, overqualified is a term that I think is sort of a mask for something else. It's code for you're too expensive. You're too old. You're going to come in and take a job and you're going to scare the hell out of the manager who is, 20 years your junior. Or, we're afraid you're going to leave. I mean, I think all of those reasons are probably rooted in some validity somewhere along the way. But with the economy the way it is, the hiring requirements the way they are, the number of open positions, I think it's really time that, as a whole, we throw away sort of any preconceived things that just don't work in hiring anymore, right? I'm often fond of saying that, when they say urgent, and then they want to engage you in a 6-month, interview process, obviously somebody doesn't understand what urgent is. But when you've got so many open positions and companies that are really struggling to fill them, something has to change. So for, me, it's about simplification, right? And how it is that you're reviewing. What is the expectation? What sort of requirements are you setting up? Are they valid for the job? And when we get into this overqualified thing, right? I mean, I will hire someone overqualified every day of the week, whether or not they stay for 6 months or 16 years. Ultimately, I'm going to, as a business owner, try to suck out every last bit of wisdom that person has to offer, right? That's what we should be looking at. So if you've got somebody that's wildly overqualified, number one, ask them why it is that they would be interested in this job. You might be surprised by their answers. People have been burnt out. They're exhausted. Maybe they spent the pandemic doing the job of 2 or 3 people and they'd like to go back to doing the job of 1. Maybe they're at the tail end of their career and they're looking to, sort of step back from the 60, 70, 80-hour work week. once you sort of ask those honest questions and you get those honest answers, then you can sort of position your organization to take advantage of the wisdom that that person has to offer. I think that overqualified is always a bit of a cop out, and it's something that we need to be looking at collectively, and why and how we can tap into the experience that these overqualified people have to bring to us.
Okay, so now I want you to take this and I want you to flip that script. So here I am, candidate, and I've been told repeatedly that I'm overqualified. What recourse can I take? How do I overcome this process of being slated as overqualified and having it really, I mean, drain my confidence, hurt my like interest
Feelings, sure,
and my feelings, and like put a total kibosh on my mojo.
Feelings in a job search are real. Yes.
Yes.
I think that, the most effective thing, someone who is consistently getting, you're overqualified. Number one, they need to look at the level that they're applying to. So if they are consistently getting feedback or going on interviews and they're saying, to you, you're overqualified, you may be applying at the wrong level. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, if you are someone who is actually applying for a position that you will take, and you know right at the outset that you're deemed overqualified, you need to, at the very front of that engagement, set the expectations. Here, I know that you may see, and just call it out and be honest.
Right.
I know that you may see that I've been a director for the past 15 years. This is why I'm interested in this position. Looking back over my career as a director, or even previous to that, I have been happiest and have enjoyed the most and have been most successful in helping to train and develop the tools for young sales professionals coming up. This is something I have a passion for. Here's some examples of my results. This is why I'm applying for this position. So if you can sort of take the guesswork out of why it is that you might consider applying for a job that someone might be to perceive to be underneath you, or for you to be overqualified, just be honest about why it is that you want that job. Sometimes it's just, hey, I need a job. As much as I love managing people, I'm happy to go back to an individual contributor. Here's what I think I can offer. The more honest and genuine you are in your approach, I think the much better results that you get.
Exactly. Like me personally, I have so much more respect for somebody who is going to come to me and lay it all out than try to, play
Schmooze me.
Monty.
You're not fooling anybody, right?
Let me look under that shell, right? Like
Right.
That doesn't work. But
Right.
I love this transparency, because it does, even if it does feel vulnerable, at least it's instilling a level of trust, and at least you've come to the table and said, I'm legit. Like
I love that you said vulnerable, because that is absolutely true. But now just think, if you are the person on the other side of that and you hire this powerhouse in, you're the champion. So, I mean, the tides sort of turn and twist all through an engagement process when you're interviewing someone. Someone might feel vulnerable, or someone might feel that they're at a disadvantage. But, if you're a hiring manager or you're a recruiter and you're bringing me a powerhouse for a mid-level job and they actually want that job and they're going to come in and kick ass, you're a hero. That's what people sort of need to be looking at. We're so set in our ways for requirements and benchmarks and all of that. That's why we're in the situation that we're in. I say it all the time. Everybody's looking for employees. Nobody can get hired.
Right. And this is, I think, particularly relevant with pending, again, I'm not a doom and gloom person, but I'm hoping that people that are listening to this in some level of concern, fear, paralysis about what is going to happen with this said recession, use this methodology and approach as they may have been either let go and are in very much need of
a job,
doing something that is a job and is fulfilling to them. I have many people that I work with that are saying, I just really want to be an individual contributor. Managing people is not my jam. Now, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't thrive in an IC role just because you've already been a VP.
Right. Absolutely.
So there has to be some elasticity on both ends. the last kind of pile of crap is sitting in this like labyrinth of a hiring process, right?
Right.
I mean, it's almost like I did a Spartan race in June. It's almost like how many more obstacles can you overcome? You know, do you want my blood type? What is going
I
on
know.
here? And how do you know as a candidate when to call bullshit and say, hey, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, for the clientele that we work with, right? I mean, we work with mostly senior level, executive level folks. I've seen people go on one interview. I've seen people go on 18 interviews for one job, right? I mean, and everything in between. But there has to be some reasonable person or some reasonable idea that before a company sets out to hire a candidate, what it is that that expectation is going to be, whether or not that's a couple of in-person interviews. Sometimes they want you to take a skills test, then it's an assessment, then it's a background check, then they're going to do a panel interview, now we want you to do an assignment, and it just continues to go on and on and on and on and on. And the big trend that I am seeing right now is that a lot of organizations at an executive level, they want candidates to participate in what I call a homework assignment situation, where they're creating a business plan, a sales plan, a marketing plan, a board of directors presentation. And then they're taking that information and they're not hiring anyone for the job. I mean, it's really one of the most unethical things that I've seen.
You
People
mean
spending 3 or
stealing?
4 months of their time, yeah, and then coming back to them and saying, you know what, we decided not to hire. That's all crazy. So I think that every company, for whatever job you're hiring, right at the outset, you need to let candidates know this is a 1 interview process, a 2 interview process, a 10 interview process. We expect it to take 1 week, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, and then let the candidate decide. Because once you sort of get engaged, right, you go to the first interview, then you go call back for the second, and then it's an assignment, and then it's a third, and then it's a panel, and then we want you to come and spend the day. You're like too far in. And a lot of people feel like they can't then back out. They feel like they've got so much
Right.
time invested. So just as much as salary ranges or an idea of a salary range needs to be included in a job description, so does the level of engagement needed for an interview process. If not, everybody saw that article this week, and damn, I wish I would have written that article. We'd like to hire you, but we must interview you forever, is a very, very true and painful truth for a lot of job seekers today. Job interviews that go on forever and never get across the finish line.
Yes. This is like an epidemic, right?
It
And
is.
it really is, and it's spreading like wildfire. I have a lot of clients that talk about the bait and switch. You know, they said that it was this, and then they keep piling on these, these kind of addendums to the process, which of course is exhausting and frustrating. So much time that is invested. And, I like the story that you had shared with on one of your posts, that basically a gentleman was told that he was receiving an offer and he was awaiting his FedEx with the offer, which was promised. And, he was like, bye-bye, right? Because he had
Yeah, I mean,
other
weeks and weeks went by. I mean, when you're, involved in an interview process that intensive, right? And then you're told you're getting an offer, we're sending, the fun stuff by mail, your benefits, your compensation package, brochures for the health insurance coverage, yada yada. So he's waiting. Nothing. Days go by. He's calling. He's leaving messages. People are in precarious situations, right? They're looking for jobs. They've got other offers, maybe other opportunities on the table. Maybe they have a current position. Maybe they've given notice. I've had people that have given notice, picked up their families and moved, and they get to a new destination, and they're in the job for a month, and there's layoffs. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and hardly ever any recourse. We won't get into that today, but absolutely setting those expectations and sort of demanding the respect that you deserve. I think that that's, really where the key is here. Knowing what you're getting into, making the choice as to whether or not you want to participate, and getting the respect that you deserve through the process is really the takeaway for me. And that's what needs to happen.
I'm also going to add in here, you candidate, keep asking about the process throughout the process, right? At every single interview, touch point, conversation, email, you want to be able to find out if there's any kind of recalibration, because your time is it's limited, right? It's limited, and you may have other opportunities that are closer that you may care about more. So why are you going to continue to jump through hoops over here if they keep going through this same, level of acrobatics?
Absolutely.
So keep doing that. I also just, oh man, we could literally, I know you're at the Jersey Shore, so I can't keep you for long, but like this is a great question. What are your thoughts on AI and intelligent interviewing prior to speaking with someone, taking a test, quiz, psych survey? Thanks, Mark, for asking. Have at it.
Yeah, do I think that that has a place in some applications? Absolutely. But just a general, psychological survey, some people are really great at taking tests. Some people are not great at taking tests. I don't know that that has ever been or will ever be an accurate predictor of whether or not someone is going to be a good employee. Again, we're constantly at a position in this country where we're putting the onus on the employee. If I take a really great test and then you match me up with a shit boss that yells at me every day when I walk in the door and a company that doesn't give me the tools to succeed, I'm not going to succeed at that job.
Right.
It's there's too much sort of this weighing and testing and assessing candidates, and then it sort of drops the ball when they become an employee. So again, I think that we need to go back to a much more genuine approach, a much more conversational tone. Do I think that if you're in a position where you are, dealing with numbers, that you should take a test that shows me whether or not you have the skill to do it? Absolutely, perfectly fine. But don't test just for the sake of for testing someone.
Right.
Make sure that it's relevant and it's not general. What's your favorite color, or who do you want to have dinner with, living or dead? Yada yada. None of that tells me anything.
Yeah, I do want to really support the point that you made earlier, Robyn. Vulnerability is a risk, especially in an interview, but great. Emotionally intelligent leaders will see and value you for that.
100%. That's a statement that I absolutely agree with. It makes you real. It makes you real. Can you imagine just a parade of candidates saying the same thing, behaving the same way all day long? What would stand out in your mind? Someone who is vulnerable, someone who is genuine, someone that says, I don't really know the answer to that question, but here's how I think I might go about it. That to me, again, is someone that I want to have a relationship with.
Totally. And this one from one of my favorites, author of Involuntary Exit. Elasticity is a great word. It's tough for hiring managers to believe that candidates are burnt out from a management portfolio and will be okay reporting to someone else as long as they are a contributor. Yeah, mind bender. Not everybody wants to, have a team of 100.
Right.
Not everyone is cut out for it. And better to know yourself and to be able to say, hey, you know what, that's not my area of strength, but this is really a great way to replace that perception, to really focus in on where you can make the
contribute. Absolutely.
And
this was so great. Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate
we're wrapping up. I know you have a big day. I know you're going to be out with your daughter or your friends or your mom or somebody else, and probably going out and
No, I just have a meeting with my accountant.
Okay, that works too. We're going to sign off, everyone. Robyn, just one more minute on the wrap up, and I just thank you, everyone, for all your participation. Robyn, it's hard not to say this, but you're the bullshit rock star.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. This was so fun. Thank you so much for asking me.
Of course. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.